G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kaitlyn and I'm an American learning to live down under here in beautiful Sydney, Australia. Even though America and Australia are so similar to each other, some of the differences catch me up time and time again, and one of those is when holidays come around. Obviously there are holidays that are celebrated in one country and not the other, some days that are celebrated but on completely different times of the year, and others that even though they're on the same day or they have the same ideas behind them, they're completely different between one country and another. So grab a bicky, grab a cuppa, and let's take a deep dive into some of the holiday differences between America and Australia. So starting off with the first day of the year, New Year's Day. While this is kind of similar between the countries, the ideas are the same. The idea of a new year, a new start. Some people make New Year's resolutions in both countries. You do have to remember that America is in the northern hemisphere, Australia is in the southern hemisphere, and the seasons are flipped. So it is summertime over here in Australia when it is New Year's, whereas in the States, it gets pretty cold. It is right in the heart of winter. So in the States, while some people will go skiing or sledding or snowboarding, over here in Australia, people might be throwing barbecues or going to the beach. So New Year's Day is celebrated in both countries, but it is celebrated just a little bit differently. Now over in the States, we have Martin Luther King Day, and this is celebrated on the third Monday of every January. In honor of Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, this is a day where there's really a focus on volunteering in the community. Most businesses, schools, banks, etc. are closed on this day, and it is supposed to be a time to give back to your community. It is also the biggest volunteer day of the year over in the States. So Martin Luther King Day is an American holiday. It's not celebrated over here in Australia. Just like this next holiday is celebrated in Australia and not in America, and that is Australia Day, which is currently the 26th of January. Although we do keep hearing rumors every single time that Australia Day comes up that might be changing at some point in the future. Australia Day, while it is supposed to have the excitement and the gusto of the 4th of July behind it, and it's a day to really celebrate Australia as a country as a whole, the day itself has become fairly controversial because of the day it falls on. The 26th of January was the day that James Cook landed in Sydney and is technically the start of the colonization of Australia. So while Australia is meant to be celebrated and a day to really unite Australians all across the country, this particular date has been very dividing, especially in the last decade. But obviously this is a day that is celebrated in Australia, not in the States. Into February, Groundhog Day is a day that, while it's not necessarily celebrated in America, it is a day that is pretty well known across the country, especially where I'm from in Pennsylvania, because the groundhog that is pulled out of the ground on Groundhog's Day is actually from Pennsylvania. So the idea that the groundhog comes out and whether or not he sees his shadow is supposed to indicate whether or not there will be 6 more weeks of cold winter weather. Even though growing up it felt like you saw a shadow every single year. So even though there's really no scientific evidence behind this idea, it is a cute little tradition. And every 2nd of February is Groundhog Day over in the States. February is the biggest sporting event over in the States, and that is Super Bowl Sunday. Super Bowl Sunday takes place on the 2nd Sunday of every February, and it is huge. It is a multi-billion-dollar event. There are millions of Americans who watch this event every single year. Even in Australia, I was actually able to connect to my parents' cable and have like the VPN set up over here so I could watch it. So even over here in Australia, I have a friend who's actually in South Korea, and she got to watch the Super Bowl in South Korea at like 8 in the morning. So Americans all around the world still tune into this huge national sporting event. And even though it is a national event, it's a little ironic that the winners call themselves the world champions, because there's no international teams that play. But the Super Bowl is hands down the biggest sporting event in America. And it's not an official holiday, but it's pretty common for Americans to call out the next Monday because of a hangover. Yeah, I've done that before. The 14th of February in both countries is Valentine's Day. And I feel like that really needs no explanation. It's Valentine's Day, it's obligatory Hallmark card day. Obligatory get your partner a dozen roses that cost 3 times more than they normally would for any other day of the year day. the day that is the most uncomfortable to go to restaurants because they want to get as many bookings in as possible, so they rush you through this ridiculously expensive, like 4-course steak dinner that costs twice as much as it normally would. But hey, it's the most romantic day of the year, right? And this day could fall between February or March, depending on the time of year, but that is Mardi Gras. And Mardi Gras does take place in both countries, but it is a very different type of celebration with very different meanings behind it. Mardi Gras in the States was traditionally a Catholic holiday that was celebrated in New Orleans for anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, leading all the way up to Fat Tuesday, right before the start of Ash Wednesday, and the part of the Catholic calendar that leads into Lent. Whereas over here in Australia, while it does have that same timeline and culminate around that same period, Mardi Gras is actually very different. Mardi Gras is actually the largest LGBT celebration in the Southern Hemisphere and is one of the largest gay pride celebrations in the world. It's typically held on the first Saturday of March and has events for up to 3 weeks beforehand, leading all the way up to this huge event. And Sydney was actually selected to be the host of the 2023 World Pride, which is the first time this event will actually take place in the Southern Hemisphere. So while Mardi Gras does take place in both countries, there are very different meanings behind it. The 8th of March all across the world is known as International Women's Day. I did make a video on this before. If you want, you can go and check that out, whichever side that's going to be. But the 8th of March is International Women's Day, where it is a day to acknowledge the contributions of women in various fields, women throughout history, and honestly even just the women in your day-to-day life. And also a day which is more so acknowledged in the States than over here in Australia is St. Patrick's Day, also called St. Paddy's Day with 2 D's, not 2 T's. And that is to celebrate St. Patrick, celebrate Irish culture, Irish heritage. And it's honestly known to be a very big drinking day, especially over in the States. Like Mardi Gras, this can take place in March or April, but that is Good Friday and Easter Monday, and obviously Easter Sunday. So Easter Sunday is the end of the whole Catholic Lenten part of the Catholic calendar, celebrated by Christians all over the world, and Good Friday is the Friday before Easter, which is like the most sad and solemn day in the Christian calendar, and Easter Monday is the day after Easter. I had never had off for these days from a job before until I moved over here to Australia. In the States, even though we know what they are, they're not really acknowledged as holidays. Typically, people would have to request time off of work if they wanted to take off of those days. But over here in Australia, both Good Friday and Easter Monday are public holidays. So having a 4-day weekend is absolutely wonderful. Along with that, like it is this year, immediately following Easter is ANZAC Day, and that takes place on the 25th of April every year over here in Australia, and it is a very solemn holiday. Typically a little bit more solemn in the morning and a little bit more lighthearted later on in the day. ANZAC Day is fairly similar to the idea of Memorial Day over in the States. Probably a little bit of a mix between Memorial Day and Veterans Day, but ANZAC Day does have a little bit more of a specific history behind it. While it is a day to acknowledge veterans all over, it is typically focused on veterans from World War I, World War II, affectionately known over here as the ANZACs, which is the Australia and New Zealand Army Corps. ANZAC Day typically starts with a sunrise service, a dawn service. I've heard it called both names. I've heard dawn service a little bit more, but it's a very solemn service early in the morning, and then followed by a little bit of a lighthearted day, a chance for people to be together. There are parades and motorcades, things like that that take place all across the country. So obviously ANZAC Day is a day that is celebrated over here in Australia and not in America. Now, before Memorial Day in May, there is Mother's Day, and that takes place on the second Sunday of every May in both countries. This is something that's celebrated at the same time in both America and Australia. And I think pretty much everybody knows what Mother's Day is. It's typically a day to thank your mom, to acknowledge her, to give her a little bit more of a special day. And if you're like me and you live overseas, make sure you give her a video call. And while it's the only holiday in May over here in Australia, in the States we do have Memorial Day. While it is in a way similar to ANZAC Day, it spans much farther than just thinking about World War I or World War II. it really does expand to all veterans. And while it's not typically the day where everybody goes out and thanks veterans for their service, it is supposed to be more of a solemn day. It takes place on the last Monday of every May, and it's also known as the kickstart into summer vacations for most people. So most people will leave work on Friday or even take Friday off and then be off on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So while it is supposed to be a little bit more of a solemn day, typically this is also the start of most summer vacations, and it kind of gets underwashed just a little bit how important the day really is. And though there's nothing like a dawn service or anything like that, there are different ways that Memorial Day is acknowledged in all different states and all different cities across the US. America would never look at this as a holiday, and that is the Queen's birthday. And for most states and territories, that is celebrated on the 13th of June, although for some reason Western Australia celebrates it on the 26th of September. But the Queen's birthday is a public holiday over here in Australia. This one surprised me a little bit, and I didn't know this until I started dating an Aussie, but the third Sunday of June in the States is Father's Day. So Aussie dads, don't worry, I haven't forgotten you, like the family court systems over here. Father's Day is acknowledged, but it's actually acknowledged in September, so we'll get to that. But in similar vein to Mother's Day, Father's Day is just a day to acknowledge your father, to appreciate the sacrifices he has made, and also give him a video call if you're like me and live overseas. In the States, last year this was finally recognized as a national holiday, and that is Juneteenth, which takes place on the 19th of June. It is a day to commemorate the emancipation of African Americans from slavery over in the States. And overall, it's just a day to observe and celebrate African American culture and African American contributions over in the States. Now, while Australia has no holidays in July, obviously the 4th of July is a huge holiday over in the States, also known as Independence Day, which is a day to celebrate the signing of the Declaration of Independence over in the US. Along with that, a lot of Americans abroad do celebrate the day as well. Even if we're not living in the States, it is where we came from. And a lot of the major cities over here in Australia do actually have their own little celebrations put together by Americans. I feel like thanks to American media, Hollywood, social media, pretty much everybody knows what the 4th of July is. Everybody knows what Independence Day is. I'm sure somewhere at some point you have seen a clip of it in a movie.
There was only one night game a year. On the 4th of July, the whole sky would brighten up with fireworks, giving us just enough light for a game.
As for holidays in August, there really are no national holidays for either country. You'll have things like National Beer Day, National Cat Day, National Book Lovers Day, World Mosquito Day, and my personal favorite, Cheap Flight Day. Yeah, there are no holidays in either country in August. Over in the States, the first Monday of September is Labor Day, and it is just one day that is acknowledged across the entire country. Over here in Australia, while Labor Day is still celebrated, it actually has 6 different days depending on the state or territory you're living in. Now over here in Australia, Father's Day is actually celebrated in September, and it's celebrated on the 1st September of the month. And it has the exact same idea as Father's Day in June over in the States, which is really just a day to appreciate and thank your dad. Now, in October, the States have a Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. It takes place on the same day and has been very controversial over the last few years. Personally, I don't know why we even have a Columbus Day. It's not like he was the first person to discover the Americas. It was actually Leif Erikson, who was a Viking. Now, this day takes place on the second Monday in October, which this year just coincidentally happens to fall on my birthday. But a lot of schools and businesses and banks do still take off on this day. And while Indigenous Peoples Day is acknowledged over in the States and it does take place on the same day, I guess old habits die hard, and it's still known as Columbus Day. Even though Christopher Columbus wasn't the first person to discover America. This one is one of my favorite days of the year, and that is Halloween. It takes place on the last day of October and is so much fun, at least when you're a kid. It's still pretty fun when you're adults and people are still throwing Halloween parties and you get to dress up and be silly for a night. But I remember Halloween was huge for me as a kid. I loved trick-or-treating. I loved getting dressed up. As an adult, my friends used to throw Halloween parties back in the States, and they were so much fun. So it is a little bit sad to see that while it is kind of acknowledged over here in Australia, it is not nearly as big of an event as it is over in the States. Or at least as big as it used to be. I feel like people don't go trick-or-treating on the day as much anymore, and they've started doing trunk-or-treats like the weekend before. I don't know, if you guys want to see me do like a little Halloween comparison video, let me know in the comments down below. November is a surprisingly busy month. It is kind of a kickstart to the holiday season. And over here in Australia, on the first Tuesday of the month is the Melbourne Cup. And if you're in Victoria, chances are you have off for that day. If you're living in one of the other states or territories, even though you don't have off, work is probably going to be celebrating this somehow. Whether it's letting people out of work early, whether it's having beers in the office, whether it's showing the race on the TVs at work. Some people get dressed up and they do like the hats and the fashion. Like, there's so many ways that a lot of offices still acknowledge the Melbourne Cup here, even if you don't live in Victoria. And in a way, it's kind of similar to the Kentucky Derby over in the States, but in the States, I feel like unless you really love horse racing, a lot of people don't really know when the Kentucky Derby is. Like, they know what it is, and it's mostly known for not just the horse race, but the hats and the fashion and the mint juleps. But while the Kentucky Derby isn't considered anything close to a holiday over in the States, here the Melbourne Cup is really celebrated. Like, the whole country stops for a horse race. Now, a day that both countries celebrate is Remembrance Day, which is also called Veterans Day, more so in the States. I haven't heard it called Veterans Day over here in Australia. It is known as Remembrance Day mostly over here. It does take place on the same day, and that is the 11th of November. And while for Memorial Day over in the States, people often didn't acknowledge veteran service so much on that day, it was more a focus on the sacrifice and the loss. This is more of a day to actually celebrate veterans, to actually thank them for their service. And on the fourth Thursday of every November in the States is Thanksgiving. And I feel like this needs no explanation. I feel like so many Aussies already know what Thanksgiving is. I'm sure you guys have seen it in a movie clip or a TV clip or on social media somewhere.
All right, where's that turkey?
Joey, those are my maternity pants.
No, these are my Thanksgiving pants.
So as an American, I know I'm not going to be able to get home probably by the end of this year, long story. So I'm probably going to be doing a little bit of a Thanksgiving/Friendsgiving over here in Australia. And if you want me to vlog some of that for you guys, see what it's like actually having a Thanksgiving meal over here in Australia in November, right when it's starting to get warm, let me know in the comments. And finally, December. Obviously, the 25th of December in both countries is Christmas. And Christmas in both countries is celebrated so different. Next year, I'm going to have to do a video on the differences. Now that I've been here for 2 Christmases in Australia, I feel like I could really dive deep into what the differences are. Over here in Australia is Boxing Day, and it's not acknowledged over in the States at all. Boxing Day isn't really a thing, whereas over here in Australia, it almost seems the way Americans look at Black Friday. Like that really big sale day after Thanksgiving, that's how a lot of people seem to view Boxing Day over here. There's Boxing Day sales, so people are rushing to the shops. People are off that day, so people will have lunch together, typically with people that they couldn't see on Christmas or Christmas Eve. It's also just another day off of work and a chance to go to the beach, have a barbecue, relax, and chill. Finally followed up by the last holiday in the year for both countries, which is New Year's Eve. And obviously, fireworks are a big part of New Year's Eve. I've been to the Sydney fireworks twice over here. In America, there is no way you could not pay me to go see the ball drop in Times Square. It's mobbed, it's packed, it's absolutely ridiculous. But there are also other little celebrations in cities all throughout the country on New Year's Eve. And one tradition that I've noticed in both countries is that if people don't want to go out, everybody has the TVs on and they're watching the news outlets. They're doing recaps of big news over the year. They have live concerts going. They almost seem to have an in memoriam moment where they go through lists of celebrities and really famous athletes and such who have passed away over the last year. So if you're not out at a party, if you're not out watching fireworks, you can always sit back, relax, and enjoy the fireworks and the news programs from your own couch. So that's it for this video, you guys. I hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. If you did, hit the like and subscribe button down below to join our little Amer-Australian family. I post on Mondays and normally Thursdays about the differences between American and Australian culture and the overall process of learning to live down under. My name's Kaitlyn and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!